Yo guys, and welcome back to some more of the Aquatic Stage. In the previous episode, we're just beginning creating the coral forest and starting off with making a couple of custom floras and just generally have like a bit of a basic idea of how the forest is going to look. Now, of course, building a forest is no easy task, as it is, of course, kind of complicated. There's a lot of things to add in. So let's just dive right in, see the process, and check it out afterwards. Now that the montage is over, it is time to see how it looks like from the perspective of our little creature, with all the shaders, all the style filters, and all like the lovely atmospheric shading and such all put in. And I gotta say, I really do like how it came out in the end. It was very misleading while making it, because in the process of creating it, it did feel quite spread out. It did actually feel a little bit empty in some places, perhaps some props were a little bit too large. I really wasn't quite as satisfied as I wanted to be when making it, because at the end of the day I am still juggling that good old complexity meter. I really have to be careful about my budget. I have to be careful that make sure the creature, the player, can actually wander through things. Gotta make sure everything is compatible, the terrain is good, everything's interesting. You know, there's so many different things to keep in mind. That being said though, as the actual player, you know, running around this area, I do really like how it looks like from the perspective of the player. And fortunately, like I said, I have gone ahead and tested things and you can indeed wander around. Also added a couple of little like bonus parts, such as here. I figured that I wanted to add these tunnels here, for example, as you probably saw near the beginning of the montage, just because I thought it'd be nice to have like a bit of a ceiling in some places, make it really feel like you can enter into the environment and not just walk around it. Just have things feel a little bit more dynamic. As well as, of course, like we mentioned in the previous episode, having things like ceilings, having things to look up and see. That way the land isn't, or the environment isn't just around you, it's above you as well. And I hope that these are little features here that we've been able to capture. Now, of course, like I said, complexity is a thing, and I can't just dive in and add all the little details yet. I can't add the creatures, the props. Believe me, I really want to, but step by step, we'll do the environments first. Now then, next up we have to deal with the open ocean, and this is actually where I've had a couple of problems. Now, like I said, we've been having like a couple of, you know, little hurdles here and there, a couple of like little things we've got to stop and think about, but I think this is where we had our first major issue, and I'm not really sure how to deal with it just yet. Which is kind of funny really, because the open ocean is, well, open. It's an open ocean. It's going to be a large, empty, vast space. You wouldn't really think that there's much to do there. But in reality, things have been kind of tricky. So, as you can see here, this is the ocean thus far. Or mainly, it's just a great big empty space. And if I zoom out, you can see that, you know, the general size of it compared to the biome right next to it is about the same size. Or at least the same dimensions. Obviously, it's a square, not a circle, blah, blah, blah. But you can see that it's a general size I've had going for it. Whereas this here is the new intended size for the ocean, which, as you can see, pretty much covers up like what, half of the planet. It is much larger, much more vast. That way it actually does feel like this big empty space, as the ocean should be. And if we zoom into the perspective of our little tiny creature here, it is just this grand open space. You don't see, I mean, you can see a little bit of the land there, a little bit of the horizon, but it is pretty much covered by the fog, and like I said, it just looks massive. But like I said, I've been having some really big issues here. So when it comes to, you know, the aquatic stage of all things, when you imagine aquatic stage, you imagine, you know, a three-dimensional world where your creature is swimming through the water. And I really feel like that if I make an aquatic stage that doesn't involve, you know, swimming through the abyss, I think that's just going to be a big cop-out. So that's always been one of my biggest main intentions of the aquatic stage, is actually having the player at some point, if perhaps not in the beginning, but at some point midway or later on, you actually experience a creature just swimming through the abyss. But turns out it's actually a lot harder said than done, and I'll show you guys why. Now, unfortunately, the planet we're working on is getting, you know, very complicated, getting very detailed, and therefore it's getting quite laggy when it comes to editing it. Don't worry, when you're playing it, it'll be fine, but when it comes to editing it, it's getting very laggy. So I'm going to actually try and demonstrate my conundrum with you guys in a brand new area. So let's say that we have this great big open vast area. That's about, it's actually smaller than what we have for the, you know, the actual ocean, but it's, you know, close enough. Now, what you'll first notice is that the land is massively curved. There's nothing I can do about that. In fact, if I go ahead and show you guys the true flat prop here, it says true flat, so its intention is that it'll be true flat, but as you can see here, that's not flat at all. It's, again, it goes with the curvature of the planet. Now, if I go ahead and ramp it up to maximum, again, it's still very much curved. Perhaps we'll make it a bit lighter then, not quite as abrupt. It's still going to have that same curve regardless. Even if I go ahead and duplicate and overlap it, same issue. I think when a lot of people think about the aquatic stage, they think about a swimming creature, you know, swimming in the planet's ocean, in the water, and that involves, you know, in any direction. So again, this is what I think should be the case, but unfortunately it is actually really hard to get this working. So, You're probably thinking, well alright then, why not just use this technique right here, just use a single giant pad? So first of all, one thing that I really wanted in regards to this large open ocean is for there to be some kind of boundary. And I wanted a boundary for two reasons. One, so it's not quite a finite end, that way in terms of gameplay, in terms of, you know, limitations such, there is actually, you know, an area that the player can't get to. But also for number two, on top of that boundary is to have like a bit of an Easter egg where, just like in Subnautica, where if you swim too far out of the intended gameplay area, you swim too far into the boundary zone, you get attacked by a ghost leviathan. I wanted a very similar thing, as I thought, one, it would give the player the option to go further on, just like how you go into the surface. In this case, you'll go further out into the ocean and you'll be punished for it, you're not ready for it. As well as two, it just being like a cool little neat bonus. I thought that'd be better than just having, you know, some invisible walls for the sake of it. So, like I said, I want those boundary walls. Now, the issue here is that if I have to use a great big platform like this, well, first of all, I can't make it big enough. As you can see, as soon as it reds out, it becomes invalid. So let's say I move it down. Again, I can't make it big enough, but let's say theoretically I do. Let's say it reaches edge to edge, exactly the way I want it. Well, as you'll see here, it just cuts straight into the planet. And it gets to a point where, you know, if I go ahead and place my player here, I'm high up, that's great, but then as I work my way towards the other end, I just submerge closer to the ground, and that is the complete opposite effect I want. I don't want the player going to the ground, I want the player to remain in the air or in the water, high up. So, alright then, we can't use this big platform here, that's okay. What if instead I have a smaller platform, like this, and then I make, you know, I make a pattern of them, like a bit of a grid. Well, unfortunately, as you will see here, there'll either be these little holes. Now, the holes I can cover up, but that'll be like a bit of a thing. But also, you can see here how they overlap. And these little overlaps here, when it comes to really large platforms and a really tiny player, these overlaps actually cause a player to get stuck, where it creates this invisible wall that you simply can't get through. And when you're seamlessly swimming through the air, the last thing you want is to randomly get stuck on a prop. I mean, that's just completely counterproductive. So okay. Now let's say instead I take the time to painstakingly rotate them so they are on the same field. That way you don't get that little overlapping area there. Well, then we run into the same issue where if it's this large flat surface, it may as well be the same large flat surface, and again, it's just going to end up digging into the ground. That again is, you know, counterproductive. So we can't get what feels like a large flat surface because it's always going to follow the curvature of the planet. Now that's something I simply cannot do anything about because, as you know, again we'll see here, I just can't make it flat. There's truly no way to make it truly flat. I can only do it with the props. So okay, that's fine. Let's say we'll figure that one out later, but instead, for the time being, we'll have yet another giant platform. Now this one will be made for the player to go up. Let's say you're exiting the coral forest from here and you're just going straight into it. You are getting higher and higher and you're entering the open ocean. Well, unfortunately, we've got like another entirely different issue here. So, as you'll see, I'm beginning to go higher up. Now, because the platform is so large and the planet is so small, it actually ends up following the curvature of the planet yet again, and it's very hard to spot. It's very subtle, but the platform actually gets steeper and steeper. And it does get to a point where the player ends up coming to a platform that is so steep that you can't go any higher. It just, you know, will no longer let you go any higher. So that, again, is another technical issue. So the point is, unfortunately, if I want to have this large open space, there's no way I can have this large flat surface for the player to traverse on, because they're either going to fall through holes, the terrain's going to get too steep and I can't walk forward, there's going to be annoying obstacles and clipping, which again prevents the player from moving forward. I can't have the invisible platforms or follow the curvature of the planet because, again, the clipping, the obstacles, it's a really big pain in the butt, and I'm not really sure how exactly I can work with it. Alternatively, I could also just make the platforms really tiny. That way the little overlapping clipping there doesn't become a problem. But then we reach a point of complexity where if I'm going to have them that small, I'm going to need to have so many of them where it's just too many. Complexity is an issue. You know, what can you do? So that was, you know, one big thing. Now, like I said, I had the idea of having that very, very large ramped up one. That way, that's how you enter, that's how you emerge or advance into the open ocean. Another alternative was to have a spice geyser that would push you up into the air. This here being like a bit of a demonstration, some invisible gates. That way, they guarantee you remain within the intended area, and that way they elevate you onto the platform. But again, though, it's like I said, I'm going to have the same issue of all the clipping, all the obstacles, things just not really working as intended, complexity. I also can't get back down afterwards. I have to like really, really fine tune and nitpick how this all works. The fact that it works now, by the way, it never works before, so it's actually quite funny it finally works now. But again, I don't know, guys, I don't know. It's just been a big, big issue, and I promise you, while I'm summarising it here on camera, it has been an utter pain to try and figure out off camera. So, it seems like our surprisingly, you know, the open ocean was meant to be something very simple. Again, it's an open ocean, there's not much there to it. It was just going to be this large empty area with the occasional fish, like maybe a leviathan somewhere. That was going to be it. But it seems like that just the simple navigation into it has proven to be quite a problem. So this here is where I left off in terms of my testing. Now, again, to show you guys, this was meant to be the large open area, and like I said, I wanted these ridges, I wanted these boundary zones, that way the player can actually encounter them, go further beyond, and then be punished for it. That was, you know, the big desire I had. But as you can see here, it's very, very messy because I can't make him too small, otherwise it will eat up complexity, and I'm already halfway to complexity. It's a big concern right now. So we haven't even added the creatures in yet. We have no creatures in our world yet, we're already halfway there, so I'm very, very conscious about doing things efficiently. That being said though, I can't have too many of the small ones. Even just these large ones, you have this great big clipping here. It's all well and good that the player can, you know, make their way upwards, even though this is actually too steep. I mentioned curvature earlier. This actually becomes too steep the higher you get up. It really, really sucks. But let's say you were able to carry on forwards and you would just randomly fall down, which again is really, really weird. Let's say you keep on going forwards. Well, now you can't go backwards because you cannot go back this direction because now this boundary here is just going to be blocking your way. And even though there's going to be like an intended path, even though I want the player to go to a particular area, is open world. I need them to be able to go wherever they want. So, yeah, it's been a bit of a problem, really. Hence the title of the video, our very first problem, and I'm really not sure how to deal with this because I really got to stress here. I want the player to be able to actually swim in the open ocean, but I can't seem to do that in any manner that, you know, is bug-free. I can't do it in any such a way where the player can, you know, seamlessly go back and forth, where they can traverse fine without a care in the world, where they remain high in the air, where the platforms actually follow the curvature of the planets, that way we can actually reach end to end. I just can't find a balance to make it all work, unfortunately. So it's gonna have to be, I'm gonna have to do, I really don't want it. I may have to just come to a compromise and either make the areas smaller, like it originally was previously. I really don't want to do that, but I may have to. That way we can make it small enough, that way we can have a large enough platform to go end to end. Or we make it so the player does indeed have to be on the surface for some of it. I guess theoretically what I could do is something like, if I get rid of all of these for a quick second here, theoretically what I could do is have like a large platform like this, so that you can like end up from the center traversing upwards into the ridges, but it just really isn't what I wanted. It really takes away from the whole general, you know, going up in the ocean. Not to mention, this here's a problem. random invisible walls right here. That's obviously not going to work at all. We can't have that. And especially over here, if the player just randomly comes underneath this area here, they'll bug out. They'll completely glitch out. It's not a viable solution. But again, I could just make it smaller then. I could just make it a lot smaller, like this, but that means that for the entirety of this area here, for everything else, they're on the surface, and it sucks. I don't want that to be the case. So guys, that's the rant over. I didn't really want the episode to turn into a rant, but the entire point of this series has been to show you the entire process. Well, as part of the process, we've now come into a big problem. So I think what's probably going to have to be the best course of action is to start working, is to skip this biome and work on the next one, the deep ocean. In fact, that being said, another issue I did face with the whole, you know, giant platform thing. Let's say I did this again. Let's say I had, you know, this big platform up in the air. Another issue I did have was trying to make the sky darker. I had to use like buildings for that, and just believe me when I say it didn't work. The sky came out very glitchy. I can't change the colour of it, so unfortunately it's going to remain at murky green, and it was just a bad time. But yes, I think I'm going to just skip this area entirely, work on the next biome, and really hope that somehow, we can come up with an efficient solution that ticks every box, that isn't too expensive, and that actually just simply works. I hope so, because if not, we're going to have to come up with some compromises, and it's really going to take away from what I wanted to accomplish here. So yeah guys, we've got the good, the bad, and the ugly. This episode is by far the ugly, but I hope it's a learning experience, and for sure, as soon as we find a solution, I will happily show you guys. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you've got any ideas, please do tell me. I'm so open to trying new things here, so please let me know. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.